Redditors that grew up poor, what's a family activity or experience you loved as a kid that you now realize was your parent per second way of showing they loved you while still trying to shield you from the worst of their financial hardships? When I was younger and my dad got laid off, the kids still needed clothes. My mom wasn't the best seamstress, but she could follow a pattern. So I got to pick out a pattern with like 3 different shirts and simple pants. Then I got to pick out 3 colors of fabric and buttons. I thought it was the best time. She made it into a game and I had no idea she was trying to get the most bang for her buck. I even got matching headbands with the leftovers, and for a 9-year-old that was impressive stuff. Edit. Man, I had no idea this would be a thing several people had grandparents do. Growing up we were not poor per se, maybe lower middle class, but things hit hard when my dad was laid off for a year. I know now the prices of things would not even out, but in the mid-90s it probably did. When I was younger, my parents during the summer would cook lunch most days for us and a couple of my brother and my friends every day. It was not much, it was almost always chorizo and eggs or beans or fried potatoes and salsa from the garden, always with all the corn tortillas you could stand. I was much older before I realized as poor as we were growing up, some of my friends had less and some days that was the only meal they got, and the things we cooked were the only things my parents could afford to feed the 6 or 7 of us every day. I am still good friends with all of those guys, and most of them still call my parents mom and dad and show up to family events like kin. And those are still meals the lot of us still eat as staples of our diet. Not because we have to, they just have so many summer memories to them. When I was a kid, my brother and I wanted to fit in and eat American food, so my parents would go on the days when hamburgers were 19 cents. My brother and I would have a burger each. My parents would then go home and eat rice with soy sauce. My mom used to take me to the beach with a bag filled with sandwiches and juice. All the places, like bowling, needed payment. But the beach? Free. We'd stay there all day long building castles, finding shells, and she'd tell me some wacky stories. Thinking back, she didn't eat much of the food, it was mainly for me. She also learned how to ride a bike a little after I did. My bike was given to me by a donations program, it was used but restored. She saved up for an old used bike and bought it so she could spend time biking with me on the weekends. My parents lived in a beat-up trailer house for about 1/3 of my life, and they were almost constantly thousands of dollars in debt, so Christmas was always a really tough time for them, especially for my mom. But one Christmas when I was about 4 or 5, I really loved rocks, so for Christmas, my mom walked all around town and collected as many pretty rocks as she could find and wrapped them up and gave them to me. I played with them for weeks on end, and they quickly became my favorite toys. I'm now 18 and both of my parents are remarried to different people and are both financially stable, and my mom still gives me at least one cool rock she finds every Christmas. My dad was a single dad and raised me and my 2 brothers practically by himself. The only income he had was from disability checks. Some weekends we would pack his car with blankets and pillows and go to the local drive-in and watch whatever movies were playing. It didn't seem like a big deal then, but in hindsight, I'm really grateful he took what time and little money he had to do that for us. The drive-ins were some of my fondest memories. My mother would take us to a hotel down the street from our family home for one night as our vacation. I have such vivid memories from the couple of times we did this. After my parents divorced, my mother was left with a drained joint bank account, avid stalkers, and our home was quite literally falling apart, holes in the ceiling etc., and we would randomly head to it in for the night and use the indoor pool and get free breakfast and snacks. I guess as a child a hotel seems so lavish and out there. I realized in my teenage years that my mom was not only trying to give my sister and I a vacation, but was scared to be in our home. I love macaroni and ketchup with butter. I still eat it sometimes to this day, and my so thinks I am mentally ill for it. Turns out it was a Depression-era recipe my mother learned from her grandmother. We were dirt poor. But my dad did anything he could to make us happy. He built this amazing 2-story cubby for us and, as a fam of 4, we'd have sleep outs in it. I realized later we couldn't afford camping or him having time off work, so this was our family's camping trips. We were so lucky with the dad we got. Hess a frickin' gem. Now he is a multi-millionaire and hasn't changed one bit. We used to make croutons as a family activity and then eat them like chips together. It's a small thing, but when I was a kid I didn't realize it was my dad trying to use all of the food. I thought everyone just ate croutons like a dessert. Going to the races. My mom worked for the city at a popular speedway. Employees got into the infield free. We thought it was a fun camp-out race time, but it was just one of the few events she could get us into at no charge. As kids we were aware of what holidays were coming up but never clear on the exact dates. While we were still very young our parents would wait a few days after the official holiday so they could get whatever leftover candy and presents at half price. And then they would just announce that Easter is this weekend. Long walks together. Every Sunday we'd go on a long-ass walk around Dublin. Mostly to the Phoenix part which was close enough. Occasionally a museum in town, which were free. My dad found a way to inject something into everything. Years later he apologized to me for not being able to give me all the things he knew I wanted as a kid. I told him not to and that I wouldn't change my childhood for a second. I meant it too. I pointed out that a lot of my contemporaries who had gotten everything they wanted didn't amount to much, whereas I'd done all right mostly because of the things he taught me. Thanks, Dad. I'll be seeing you on Tuesday for the first time in 6 months. You're going to be 80 this week. I hope you have many more birthdays to come. Oddly, rolling change. I always thought it was super fun and never realized that we rolled coins because we fucking needed them to support ourselves. Also eating breakfast for dinner. We had camping indoors. Shut off all the lights, lay down a green blanket for grass, and build a blanket fort. I always thought it was because my parents didn't like camping and wanted to stay comfortable, but when I was a teenager, I realized it was because we couldn't afford vacations. The lights still worked, it's not because our power was shut off. Gunk for dinner. Otherwise known as macaroni noodles, onion, and crushed tomatoes from the can. Living off bologna and ketchup sandwiches. I was one of my only friends without basic cable. My parents pretended it was because TV was bad for you, so watching PBS and renting movies was a special treat. In my hometown, there is a movie theater that plays movies that were out for a while, and the tickets are $1. I am one of 5 and my father did not make a lot of money, so whenever we wanted to watch a new movie, he would make us wait until it got to the dollar theater and take all of us and allow us to splurge. Rice for breakfast every day. We didn't have breakfast food unless I had a friend sleeping over. Rice was my favorite food. My parents really sold it. I thought people in movies were eating rice all the time, not oatmeal or applesauce. My mom got a bunch of cardboard boxes for free from the grocery store and built me this awesome clubhouse. It had windows, 2 rooms, doors. It was super cool and I had a blast in it for about a week until it got broken. Taking me to the library. The library in my town had free entertainment and programs for kids in the summer. I would spend all day at the library reading or getting involved in some activity for the day. Vegetable garden. Peas straight off the vine, an incredible experience that you cannot have unless you grow them yourself. Fresh tomatoes. Zucchini. Beans. Everything is best when it doesn't spend a week on a truck. I thought we were pretty cool. But my parents could not afford to buy groceries. Seeds are cheap and child labor is free. Seeds are especially cheap when you designate a small part of each crop to go to seed so you can use them next year. I am honestly baffled now by people in rural areas who live in poverty and whose kids are malnourished. If you have dirt, your kids can have vegetables. Cowboy dinner: a can of baked beans, a tube of biscuits, and some store-brand hot dogs cut up. My mom did loads. We always had a car so could get to the country or coast for walks and camping trips. Said car was always very cheaply bought and probably untaxed and uninsured. At one point she didn't pay the phone bill for the month so that she could buy me a plush toy I longed for. She worked a cash and hand job to pay for things for me and my siblings. Did the house up by herself. As a single parent on benefits she qualified for a free college course on decorating. Our house was awful when we moved in. No doors, no kitchen cabinets, holes in the wall, graffiti. It was like a crack den. She turned it into a home. I am one of 5 kids so she was pretty busy with us, and I remember her working on the house in the evening when all the kids were asleep, except me, apparently. I don't know when she slept. Once or twice every summer my dad would bring a gallon of root beer home from A&W. Doesn't sound like much, but it was probably the only soft drinks we would have all summer. We always had plenty of water and powdered milk.